What's going on, y'all? So we're back again, and I'm reading the transcripts, one of the transcripts from the R. Kelly trial. And I believe, I'm going to guess and say this is one of the first transcripts that I have because it's where Demetrius testifies, and I think Azriel is testifying as well, or Jane Doe 5, right? Um, I was trying to actually get out of this thing, but it appears that, some people want me to continue on, and I can see that people are viewing this, so I guess I'm locked in. So what I'm going to do, because this thing is just so freaking long, what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to do this thing in pieces. So I'm going to try to get as far as I can. It's about 9:23 right now. I just took some marijuana oil that I made maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. So I'm just going to kind of read for maybe 30, 45 minutes, and I'm going to try to get through as much as I can. And from there, I'm just going to go to bed, right? So at this point, just to catch everyone up, if you haven't seen the first two videos, the first one was a live video. The second one was a upload of a live that went wrong. If you look at those two videos, you'll see that, you have the testimony of Demetrius Smith. And in that video, the first one, you can see, in my opinion, that the government really didn't establish anything. And basically, Demetrius is just rambling on the witness stands. And that's from my perspective, right? They're not able to tie R. Kelly into anything. R. Kelly wasn't involved with the marriage license, so to speak, and well, with getting the ID for the marriage license, right? And the second video gets into more Azriel, and in that video, we can see that Azriel met R. Kelly under romantic conditions. R. Kelly gives her black panties, and he gives her phone number, and then she basically tries to flip it, and she tries to date him for a career, right? I guess I could say it another way, that she tries to insert her career. He's trying to get some booty, and she's trying to insert her career into this whole thing. So that's where we are with that. Azriel lies about her age, and in the last video, it's never pointed out where R. Kelly is actually made aware that she's underage, right? So far, in these first two videos, I'm seeing a whole lot of nothing, right? So I'm continuing on, and I think this is still testimony from Azriel. We're on page 844. So let's just go ahead, and I'm just going to take it from the top. I'm not sure if I read this already. So question: over the summer of 2015, did you continue to have a sexual contact with the defendant? I did, yes. Where did you have a sexual contact with him, and what different locations? We would be intimate on the Sprinter, at the big house, the guest house, and the hotels, wherever he wanted to. And when you said Sprinter, what are you referring to? I was wondering about that as well. What the hell is a Sprinter? The Sprinter van. And when did the defendant, when were you and the defendant on the Sprinter van together? Every day every day it was our form of transportation. And you also mentioned that the big house and the guest house, were those the two locations in Atlanta? Yes. How about when you were in Chicago? Where, if anywhere, would you have had sexual contact with the defendant in Chicago? At the hotels and at the studio. The studio that you previously identified on Ohio Street? Yes. How often did you have sexual contact with the defendant during that summer of 2015? We had sex almost every day. And during the course of your time with the defendant, what, if anything, did you ever notice that the defendant was doing while you were engaged in sexual contact with him? He would basically control exactly every single time we were intimate. And what do you mean by that he would control it? Meaning that he would say everything specifically, and I would have to follow exactly what he said. And then it says, can you give me an example? An example would be if he told me to walk or crawl back and forth, and that that is what I would have to do until he gave me the next notion. When, if ever, did the defendant make recordings of you? Mr. Koenig, objection. The court overruled. almost immediately after meeting him. And by making recordings of you, what was he recording you doing? He would record us intimately. And by intimately, what are you referring to? Every time we had sex, he would record it. What did he use to record that? He uses iPads that he had. And where did you see where the defendant kept these iPads? He would keep them in the backpack. How do you know? How did you learn that the defendant was making recordings of you? Okay, so let me just stop right here and just back up. I just kind of want to comment my own personal opinion about the sex and the allegations that R. Kelly would control the sexual contacts. So again, I have a video where I think that video I titled "I Know Where R. Kelly Went Wrong," and in that video I talk about a relationship where there's a dominant person and there's a submissive person, and this is perfectly legal, right? And I think in relationships like that, it's all about consent. And at no point in this testimony does she say that she didn't want to do the things that R. Kelly wanted her to do. So, in my personal opinion, she consented to everything. So, it doesn't really matter that he controlled the relationship, and it doesn't really matter that he told her what to do in the course of having intimacy, because she agreed to it. How do we know that she agreed to it? Because she didn't object to anything. When you read the testimony, you can see that she didn't object. So don't be thrown off when you hear these things. Oh, he's very controlling. He's very dominant, so on and so forth. That's just who the man is, right? Me personally, I'm basically the same way. I'm not gonna lie to you. There's certain things that I want when I'm in a intimate relationship, and there's certain things I'm willing to do in order to get what I want, right? So uh, I understand that, and actually, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Just about every sexual relationship that I've had, right? Every time I've been intimate with the woman, I've been controlling, right? I've been the dominant person in the bedroom, and it's not so. Well, I guess I'm not gonna lie to. I think I'm lying to you. There's been certain occasions where um, basically, when I was dating people seriously, and when I was dating, when I've had a few girlfriends that I was dating seriously, there's been situations where they wanted me to do things, and I did them because we were in a relationship and I had feelings for them, right? But there's certain things I couldn't do, right? I had this one girlfriend who wanted me to lay on my stomach, and she basically wanted to get on top of me and hump me from the back. I just couldn't. No, I mean, I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. It's just not gonna happen. There's nothing in me that's going to allow someone to hump me while I'm laying on my stomach. I don't care if you're a woman or whatever. That's just not in my DNA. I'm not doing that, right? So um, for the most part, I have been the dominant person in all my intimate relationships. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you want a submissive man in your relationship, then there's plenty of people out there that are willing to be submissive. Then you go find that, right? So she could have went to go find that, and so I just want to point that out, and I'm interested to hear what women have to say about this. Comments below. Do you find that when you're in a relationship that the man is more controlling and dominant when it comes down to intimacy, or are you more dominant and controlling when it comes down to intimacy, right? And again, I do want to say that if I was married, then of course I'm going to do what my woman wants me to do in order to please her, so long as it doesn't challenge my masculinity, right? So long as it doesn't challenge my masculinity. Other than that, I'm willing to do it, right? So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about that, right? Are you what's your sex? Are you male, female? And have in a majority of your in your intimacy or intimate encounters, have you been dominant or submissive? That's all I'm going to say about that. But I just kind of want to throw that out there because I think they're just trying to throw shade on the man for being dominant and in control. And I just think that's 100%, BS. So anyway, moving on. when when would we be intimate? He would just remove an iPad from his backpack and he would prop it on something, and the camera would be facing us so that he could see everything. And that is usually how every sexual encounter with him, right? And that sounded funny. That is usually how, yeah, that's what they wrote, how every sexual encounter with him. And were you able to see at times what was being recorded? Every time I could see what was being recorded. And by the way, you mentioned that the defendant used iPads to record you. Were those Apple iPads? Yes, they are. And do you recall the first time that you noticed that the defendant was recording you engage in a sexual contact with him? Yes. When do you recall that happening? It was when I was 17 years old. Again, unless I missed it in the first couple of videos, at no point was R. Kelly made aware of her age up until this point. Now, I do remember reading an article where the individual, I'm sorry, not an individual, where Jane 5, aka Azriel, told R. Kelly that she was 17 and they had a fight. I remember that, but I haven't read that in this document, in this transcript as of yet. So I'm assuming it's coming, right? So, but at this point, she's underage, and I don't know how it works in New York. Maybe I can look that up. But in Illinois, if a person tells you they're of age to give their own consent, then that is a strong defense in the state of Illinois. So if this would have happened in Chicago and she lied and said she was, 19, and it turns out, she was 17. Well, actually, 17 is legal. It turns out she was 16. Then in Chicago, that person would basically, well, that person wouldn't even be charged, right? Once it's revealed that she is once it's revealed that she lied, right? But different states handle this differently. I don't know how it's handled in New York. Some states will say, well, hey, we don't care what went down. We don't care that she lied. We're still going to prosecute you and find you guilty, right? So just throwing it out there. And what specifically do you recall the defendant recording? Well, but actually, yeah. So I'll just leave it there. And what specifically do you recall the defendant recording? What were you doing that the defendant recorded? I recall that he made me crawl back and forth, and he then had begun to give me oral head, and then after that, we have vaginal penetration. And when you say oral head, what specifically do you mean? I gave him oral sex. And then, and what was that with your mouth on his penis? Yes, it was. And did you say that was one of the things that you saw the defendant recording? Yes, it was. With his Apple iPad? Yes, it was. How old were you when the defendant recorded that? I was 17 years old. And you also said the defendant recorded you having sexual intercourse with the defendant. Is that right? Yes. With the Apple iPad? Yes. How old were you then? I was 17 years old. When you had sexual contact with the defendant, did he ejaculate? Yes, he would. Where would he ejaculate? He would ejaculate on my face, on my chest, on my butt, and eventually begin ejaculating inside me at 17. When he ejaculated on your face, what do we do? I would usually wash it off. However, there were times where he would make me leave it on my face. Huh. What if anything do you remember about a time when he had you leave, not allow you, or didn't wash? I'm sorry, I'm fucking this up. All right. So, what if anything do you remember about the time when he had you leave, not allow you, or didn't wash your face immediately? There was, and then Mr. Kanik objects, and then the court overruled. She said that either she said it kind of awkward or it was recorded sort of awkward. Now, I guess I have to step out and say what they're trying to do now here and it's dawning on me, is that one of the things they're charging him with is, the child, is with the pornography, right? That's one of the things they're charging with, is with pornography, right? And they're trying to establish that here, right? So it's kind of tricky. It's kind of tricky because it's all based off of her telling him that she was 18. So again, in Illinois, it's kind of tricky. This is actually really tricky, and I'm just going to be honest with you guys. So in Illinois, the legal age of consent is 17. However, in order to take pictures of someone and to make videos of someone, they have to be older, right? So this is just kind of really, really, really tricky. I can't remember if 18 is old enough, right? But I'm going to say this is all, the problem with all of this is that she lied to him. That's the problem with this whole thing, right? So I can't wait to see how they handle this on the cross-examination, right? So then we're just going to go on. There was, and then objection by Mr. Koenig, and then the court overruled, right? There was a time where he did ejaculate on my face, and he told me not to wash it off and let it harden. And I do recall him having a wardrobe stylist come in and have an entire conversation with her while I had his hardened semen on my face. And I recall them laughing, and I felt very much humiliated. And I got up and I went to the washroom and washed it off my face. Do you know his stylist name? Cash Howard. Hmm. Who's Cash Howard? Uh, hmm. And then Mrs. Geddes. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 68. I'm sorry, 86. Right? She's a little dyslexic there, huh? And then she goes on. Do you recognize 86? Yes, I do. Who is that? That is his wardrobe stylist. Is that Cash Howard? Yes, yes, it is. The government offers. They're putting that in evidence, so I'm just going to skip that whole block. Now you testified earlier about the times where you, the defendant, I'm sorry. Now you testified earlier about the times where the defendant recorded you engage in sexual contact. Where, 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 where would these recordings take place? They would take place anywhere that he wanted to have sex. So if we were in the Sprinter, if we were in the hotel room, if we were in Atlanta or in Chicago in the studio, wherever we were. And did the defendant record you engage in sexual contact using his iPad in Chicago? Yes, he did. While you were 17? Yes, he did. And how about in Atlanta? Yes, he did. While you were 17? Yes, he did. So yeah, so they're really working hard to establish the there's a federal statute. It's in my videos, and they're trying to establish the child pornography claim, right? They're trying to establish that, and that's why you see them mention Atlanta, then Chicago, and they'll probably mention other places that they've been, right? And then it goes on. Did you ever see that? Did you ever see what was on the recordings that the defendant made? I only seen what he would show me, or what he would when he would prop the camera up when I could see us. Hold on a second. I only seen what he would show me, or what he would when he propped up the camera up when I could see us. What, if anything, do you recall about the defendant would show you recordings that had been made of you? He would only allow me to see about 5 to 10 seconds if he was playing it back, and it was of me and him, and he would boast or compliment how good we looked. Do you recall how old you were when the recordings were made? The defendant showed you and boasted about it? Yes, I was 17 years old. During the summer of 2015, did there come a time when you were when you traveled to Connecticut? Yes, there was. Why did you go to Connecticut? I believe we had a couple of shows that he had missed, and had to make up for. What were the shows? What type of venue? I believe they were casinos, areas and stadiums and festivals. Okay, and I'm sorry, you said casino? What do you mean by that? Well, like previously, the show in Las Vegas, that was at a casino. Okay, do you recall the specific venue for the show in Connecticut that you went to in the summer of 2015? I do not. Okay, and do you recall whether or not you had sexual contact with the defendant when you traveled with him to Connecticut in the summer of 2015? We were intimate. By intimate, do you mean we had vaginal penetration? Did you ever contact a sexually transmitted disease? I'm sorry, did you ever contract a sexually transmitted disease? I did. How old were you when that happened? I was 17. What if anything, I'm saying what I'm sorry, what if any symptoms that you first noticed? I was every single time I would have a vaginal penetration, I would have discomfort in my pelvis and in my lower abdomen, and I had expressed it to him, to the defendant. Uh, yes, I did. How did he respond? Initially, he would joke and say that it was just because he had too big size Y's, and I'm sorry. Initially, he would joke and say that it was just because he was too big size wise, and then he would try and comfort me, and he would give me a warm washcloth to place on my stomach, and he would try to massage my stomach. Did your symptoms subside? They did not. What did you do? They got worse actually, and I got to the point where I couldn't physically even walk. What did you do? I had to make a doctor's appointment, which he had which he had Juice book an appointment for. You mentioned Juice. Are you referring to the woman you met in Las Vegas? Yes. And when you said he had Juice book, who were you referring to that he in that sentence, that the defendant? Did you then meet with with that doctor? And then she goes, yes, I did. Yes. What, if anything, did the doctor diagnose you with? She said that I had contracted an STD, herpes. Did she tell you what type of herpes you had? Vaginal herpes. What, if any, medications did she prescribe for you? She had given me a few prescriptions actually, and I had told her that I wanted the most expensive one to alleviate the pain as quickly as possible. Did you get those prescriptions filled? Yes, I did. Juice was with me. Where did you go? We went to Walgreens. In downtown? Where? In downtown Chicago. And I'm sorry, where was the doctor located? Downtown Chicago. How did you feel once you learned that you had contracted herpes? I was devastated. What, if any conversations did you have with the defendant after you learned that you had contracted herpes? I had told him, and he was agitated and said that I could have gotten that from anyone. And this is true. I mean, essentially, the way this disease works is that it doesn't always come out the instant you get it. You can have this disease for years and still not know that you have it. I've made several videos on this disease where, I dig into the actual details, and I find some experts, some doctors come out, and they basically give some education on the disease. And one of the common things that they're saying is that you can get it today, and it may never show up uh, up until, like, 4 or 5 years from now, right? Or you may even show a symptom and you could still have it, right? So the other common thing that said is that it's very, very, very common, right? So all that is true, right? And then they say, what did you say? I told him that I had only been intimate with him. What, if anything, did the defendant then say about whether he had previously been diagnosed with an STD or sexually transmitted disease? He never did, right? So basically, she's saying that she's only been intimate with him, but um, we know that she's a liar, right? She lied about her age, so who's to say she's not lying about this, right? And then Mr. Koenig, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. And then the witness, he never did. Thank you, right? And you said you felt devastated. Can you explain why you felt that way? I felt that this man had purposely given me something that he knew he had, a situation that he could have controlled. Did the medication make your symptoms subside? It did. After you initially received the medication, what, if anything, What, if any, further symptoms of the STD did you feel? In the future, anytime I had an outbreak, I would only get prescriptions from him and his doctor. Did you, in fact, have additional outbreaks? I did, yes, very seldom. You said that you would get prescriptions from him. Who are you referring to? The defendant. Do you recall what you were given? They were the same blue pills that the female doctor had initially given me. Do you remember what, if anything, the defendant said when you had outbreaks after you were initially diagnosed? Anytime that I asked him, he would usually make it like a joke, like, "Oh, I take one, you take one, just take one. Everyone has it. It's like no big deal." What, if anything, would he say about parts of your body when you had an outbreak? We just wouldn't be intimate. You said that you seldomly had outbreaks. Yes. In the beginning, how often you have outbreaks? In the beginning, the very first outbreak that I ever had was very intense, and single time we tried to be intimate after that. Objection, not responsive. The court overruled. Every time we tried to be intimate after that, I would continuously get an outbreak from him, and he had expressed to me that he said, "I think your pussy is broken." And after that, did you continue to have outbreaks as well? I had to give it time to be able to be intimate with him, but after that, but after about a month, everything I had going away, right? Let me read that again. I had to give it time to be able to be intimate with him, but after that, about a month, everything had gone away. Did you have outbreaks through after the initial time? Yes, I did. You testified earlier about a few rules that the defendant told you during the first trip to California. Do you remember that testimony? Yes, I do. Once you had spent a couple of months with the defendant, did you become aware of additional rules set by the defendant? Yes, I did. How did you become aware of those other rules? He had expressed them to me, and other people around him, he had expressed them to me. Like who? His assistants, people like Juice. What were some of the rules that you learned about my wardrobe? I basically was only in sweats or oversized clothing. I couldn't leave my hotel room without getting in touch with him or asking an assistant. So again, with these crazy rules, they're trying to establish this pattern that he controlled them, and they're trying to say this is a form of abuse. This is a contract. This is a contract. This is an agreement. It's an agreement between R. Kelly and the women that he are dating, right? If you don't want to abide by these rules, you just simply say no. And if he doesn't accept that, then you say, "Okay, I'm leaving." That's it. Where in this testimony does she say she was forced to follow, these rules? And that's why it's so important that you guys go and watch the video that I labeled "I Know Where R. Kelly Went Wrong," because in that video, I point out, the situation with I think where there's a BDSM and you have a dominant person, you have a submissive, and the dominant person typically has rules. That's just the way it is. And if you think about it, you don't even have to go to that extreme with BDSM. You just think about everyday life where you have a breadwinner and you have someone that's receiving the benefits of the breadwinner, and the breadwinner basically has rules, and you either like those rules, and you either follow those rules, even if you don't like them, or you leave. It's just that simple. And if you don't like that example, just look at everyday society where if you want to go somewhere and you want to participate in something, you're going to have to follow the rules, right? So when you go to work, there's certain rules of how you go to work and how you do your work and how you come dressed, so on and so forth. If you don't like it, you leave. And if you don't like that example, let's talk about church, right? Let's talk about church. Like, let's say you go to church on a regular basis. There are unwritten rules of how you conduct yourself in the church. Most people know that you don't go to church wearing a stripper outfit, right? You go to church and you go there, you look presentable. If you decide to break those unwritten rules, you may do so, but people are still going to look at you like you're crazy, right? Then you may not get put out, right? They may not tell you to leave. I actually know some churches that will tell you to leave, but they're going to look at you like you're crazy. If you don't believe me, try going to church with a hoochie mama outfit and watch how everybody in there is going to want you gone, right? So you know, this type of questioning, in my personal opinion, it's going to trick people who are weak-minded. But, people who think for themselves, people who realize that everyone is free and independent, they're going to look at this testimony and they're going to see that she did not once, so far, object to any of these rules. And in this testimony, she hasn't yet said, you know what, I don't like this, I'm not doing this, I'm leaving, right? You don't hear that. She's just being told these are the rules, right? If you want to date R. Kelly, these are the rules. You either follow them or you leave. Plain and simple. Plain and motherfucking simple. You follow the rules and you leave. Just like when you live with your parents, you could be a grown ass man and you can go and for whatever reason live with your parents. More than likely your parents gonna have rules, and if you don't like those rules, they're probably gonna put your ass out. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. So I don't, like I said, this is going to trick the weak-minded, people who feel that they've never been able to do what they want to do in life. But for responsible people, people who make rules and set rules and things like that, they're going to just see it for what it is. She had a choice. She decided to follow the rules. She decided to agree. Not once did she object. The only question is how is the defense going to handle this on cross-examination? So that's going to be interesting. So I'm going to go a little bit further, and then I'm probably going to shut this down. Um, okay, so we talked about the overdressed wardrobe. How, if at all, did the defendant want you to respond when you enter the room? He wanted me to call him daddy and immediately give him a kiss. And what, if anything, did the defendant tell you about your communication with your friends once you were spending time with the defendant? He was not a big fan of it. He didn't necessarily want me talking to them about him or us. Back then, when you were 17 years old and spending time with the defendant, did you have a social media back then? I did. What types of social media did you have when you were 17 years old? I had social media on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. What is Snapchat? Snapchat is a picture and a chat app where you can accept your friends and family, and you can send them pictures and text messages that deletes them after it is open forever. And do you remember what I was saying? Do you remember your username for the password for your Snapchat account? Yes, I do, Ms. Geddes. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 949. Do you recognize Government Exhibit 949? I do. Yes, I do. What is that? It is my Snapchat handle, Mrs. Geddes. And can we publish this only to the jury, please? Actually, I'm sorry, the government offers 949. No objections. Okay, that's published only to the jury. Yes, please. And then, what, if anything, did the defendant tell you about your use of social media at the age of 17? How once I had moved to Chicago, he told me to delete all my social media. What, if anything, any explanation did he provide to you? He just said that he didn't want me having social media. I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government Exhibit 325. Do you recognize what's shown in Government Exhibit 325? Yes, I do. Generally speaking, what is that? This is basically something that I have been writing since I was 17 years old, and it is basically express how I need to act, think, and be around the defendant. And what made you think that you had to act, think, and be around the defendant in the way that is reflected in 325? Well, these are all things that he would say to me, and I would write them down to remember. The government offers Exhibit 325. Ms. Kennick, no objection. All right. So they put that in evidence. I hate these little blocks of text. Can you read what's shown in 325 that you wrote that you were just referring to? Yes, it says, do not be goofy, extra, act young when told something in private or around others. Do not play games when on the phone with daddy. Just say, I love you before I hang up. Continue to do what I always do around other when I'm alone with daddy. Example, bless you, dad. I'm sorry, bless you, dad. If he belches, trust daddy and do whatever he says with no rebuttal, disrespect, or rebellion. Remember how I acted in the beginning, bubbly and like a child, pure with no negative intentions. And remember to stay true to who I am, humble, happy, innocent, and beautiful. To daddy, reminding him of his mother and child. Tell daddy everything so he will not have to wonder and figure out what is going on with me. So again, this so this can seem crazy. This can seem a little bit crazy, but again, I think you have to go back, watch the video that I labeled "I Know Where R. Kelly went wrong," and I think it's actually a live stream. Now, funny enough, I actually tried to play another video from 50 Shades of Grey where you can see similar things happening. Now, believe it or not, there are people all over the United States, all over the world that have relationships like this. And again, you have to understand that it's a purely dominant submissive relationship. And I think the problem that, and I said it in that video, and I'm not gonna be ashamed to say it again. A lot of people didn't want to hear it. I think I even lost a few subscribers off of that video, right? And people don't want to hear this, but it is what it is, right? Um, honestly, I think R. Kelly, whether he knew it or not, maybe he didn't know it, maybe he didn't understand what types of relationships he preferred. And from reading this testimony, he had I would say BDSM, right? Based off all the stuff that I basically read on YouTube. You can go to YouTube, you type in BDSM, and there'll be plenty of videos that's going to explain that. That's how I've actually found out about this. So I would say BDSM, but I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say he had a relationship where he was a dominant and his girlfriends were submissive. And to everyday people, this seems crazy, but for people in that community, this is normal. This is 100% normal. And I think I think it's going to help R. Kelly if one of the jurors was actually, in that type of lifestyle. That would help R. Kelly. And I think R. Kelly probably naturally came to prefer relationships like this because of who he is. And I think that any any superstar is either going to consciously go into a relationship like this, or they are going to naturally come into a relationship like this. And the reason why I say that is that when you look at him trying to get her off of Instagram and social media, he's doing that for a reason. First off, the way that he makes his money is through his image. And if you have people recording you and basically taking your image and putting you on social media, they're basically playing with your money. So, and how can he date if he can't control how his image is basically put out there, right? Then the second reason I think he's doing this is because he realized that he has a very eccentric lifestyle, and basically he wants to keep that lifestyle private. And then there's also a third reason, and this reason I can understand is that when you're dating and you're meeting someone new, you don't want people recording the date. You don't want people putting it on social media. And that's what people are doing now without the other person's consent. You may go to a restaurant, you may do something embarrassing, you may, eat a hamburger or something like that. And you may be hungry and you'll eat it and you got, Big Mac juice dripping down your lips, that special sauce or something like that. And you're not paying attention. You're licking your fingers, and they sitting there recording all that stuff, and then they're gonna put it on their social media account, and here you are looking like a goddamn fool. So I think eventually we're going to see some lawsuits start to fly by everyday average normal people, and it's going to be over invasion of privacy. And a claim, in my opinion, is that I had a date with you, not a date with all of the world, and you basically put me on Facebook eating a Big Mac, and it made me look stupid and silly, and therefore I'm suing you for emotional distress and invasion of privacy, right? Because I didn't authorize you to put that out there, right? So I think that's why you have some of those rules, but mostly I think it's because he had a very um, naturally he was a dominant person, and he wanted to control his image, and he didn't want anybody messing with his money, and he realized that he has a very eccentric lifestyle. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about that, right? Especially about dating someone. Do you want to date all of Facebook when you go on a date with one person? Do you want unauthorized pictures and videos of you being posted to Facebook? You know what I mean? What if you invite a person over your house and they come over to your house and they take a video of everything you got in your house and they put it on, just stuff like that. There's so many, there's so much to be discovered when it comes down to social media and privacy. And I think for the most part, we're not seeing a lot of lawsuits fly because when neither person has anything, they don't go to court. It's only when you're only going to see lawsuits when you're dealing with people who know how to go to court and they know how to sue and get justice, right? But for average everyday people, I'm going to say there's tiers to average everyday people. You have, economic wise, you have people who are considered lower class, right? Meaning that, they can barely draw in enough income or resources to survive. And then you have, middle class, where you have people who can pay for all their needs, and they have enough resources to, get the things in order to survive, and then they have a little bit left over. Those are the people you're likely to see go to court um, over invasion of privacy and things like that nature. But for whatever reason, we're still not seeing it. We'll see where this goes. We'll see where this goes. But I just think this whole social media thing, putting the things on the internet and things of that nature, is just going to get out of hand at some point, and it's just going to blow up. So anyway, a little tangent there. Nice little tangent. But yeah, I think that most importantly, I think that he's a dominant and she was a submissive, and she agreed to this. So if you go off and you read some BDSM contracts, you'll see that there's language like this in those contracts. That's why I wanted to show you guys the 50 Shades of Grey video. You can go and Google, you can go to YouTube and look up 50 Shades of Grey and space contract, and you'll see where the guy is basically trying to control what she eats, how she carries herself, what she wears, so on and so forth. And this is exactly the same thing, right? And like I said, it's a it's an eccentric lifestyle. No one, there are tons of people doing it, but because it's private, you don't see it, right? So that, and I think R. Kelly went wrong in all this is that he did not put it in writing, right? And because he didn't put it in writing, I think that if he had came to Azriel, and this is my own opinion, right? This is where I'm just going to throw my own opinion out there, right? So if and you know what, with the way things are going these days, and people being going to jail over abuse claims and things of this nature, the average everyday person, if you're middle class, you may have to do this. So if I was R. Kelly, after I threw her the black panties, after I threw her the the phone number, and after we met, right? Well, first the mother talked, right? So God only knows the conversation between the mother and R. Kelly, right? God only knows, right? And after all that, when I first met her, and she told me she wanted to get her music career off the ground, and I'm going to make another video. I'm going to tell you what that video is actually going to be. And I hate to interject, but I'm going to give you the spoiler here. And it's going to be called R. Kelly is actually guilty or something like that. And I'm just going to tell you what's going to be in that, right? Because I have to, because I'm going to explain this right now. Um, when he first had a face-to-face encounter and she expressed that she wanted a career, I would have just been straight up with her, right? Because I think if R. Kelly is guilty of anything, he is probably guilty of letting people think that he was going to help them with their music career. And I can see how that probably created problems. And maybe he even intended to help them with their music career, right? Um, so I'll say that. So when Azriel met me face to face, I would have said, hey, look, I reached out to you because I like you and I want you. You know, what's that dude's name? The Booty Warrior. That's how I would have approached her. I would have been like, look, I like you and I want you. And I would have said, in order for us, to have a relationship, these are the things that, um, you know, has to be done. And then I would give her the contract. And in that contract, it would say, number one, that you are 18 years of older, right? It would have said that. And it would have also had all this other language in it, right? Because R. Kelly has to protect himself because she can say, which I actually haven't heard her say yet. She can say, "Hey, I didn't want to do all this stuff. Um, he forced me to do it, right? He forced me to do it, right? Or he held me down, and I'm not hearing that language, right? She basically agreed because she consented to all of this, right? But just to be sure, you put that in the contract and say, this is what needs to happen. And in the contract, it would say that, it would say everything that, I basically read right here that, you will wear baggy clothes around me. Um, you will call me, refer to me as this, and I will refer to you as that, so on and so forth. And again, if you think I'm making all this up, and if you think what R. Kelly, um, what she's testifying to, if you think this hasn't been done, go yourself and Google 50 Shades of Grey and contract. Not Google, but go to YouTube and type in the search term 50 Shades of Grey and basically 50 Shades of Grey and contract. And you're going to see the same language, but just not with the same words, right? The same communication, not with the same words. And then, of course, every contract, there has to be an exchange. One person is giving up something and the other person is getting something in return. So in exchange, I would have said, I would have tried to give her some of the things that, she wanted, so it's an exchange, right? It's an exchange. And I think where R. Kelly went wrong is that he didn't make it clear what the exchange was going to be. Was the exchange going to be that I was going to help you with the career? And even then, hold on a second. Even then, with him helping with the career, he kind of actually did help with the career, right? Because you see, where he actually gave her tips and pointers on how to sing, right? So that's an exchange. He's helping her out there, right? But you really want to be clear. You actually want to be clear. Is the exchange that he's going to help her with a contract, or is the exchange that he's going to allow her to have a fabulous lifestyle where you're living in, fabulous hotels, you're living in fabulous condos, you're able to drive fabulous cars, you're able to, go shopping whenever you want. Is that the exchange, right? And I'm pretty sure R. Kelly could have given her just about anything that she wanted, but you really want to get this stuff in writing. You get two agreeing parties, and you make sure on the record that both people are of age or whatever, and that's it. That's that, right? Now the other thing is that I think that he should still be good. He should still be good, but I don't know how the defense team is going to handle it. I would actually throw that at the jury. I would just say, hey, this was an agreement. It was a contract between consenting adults, and she consented to all of this. And basically, there's no crime here. That would be my actual argument. But we'll see how he actually handled these allegations, right? So we got through the note. Then the defendant, Mrs. Geddes, I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as government exhibit 331. Do you recognize what's shown in 331? I do. Yes. What is that? This is one of the many notes that I would write that the defendant would tell me so that I could remember these things, right? So basically, that gets put in evidence. Not reading that block of text. Can you read what's shown in 331? And it says, remember to say, I will not lie or mess up at all today. Find positive quotes to say to daddy every day. If I lie, own up, I'm sorry, and take it back right away. Do not contemplate, be strong, be honest, do not be angry, prideful, selfish, rebellious. And then it says, number one, yes. And then say one thing I'm thankful for every day to get rid of negative thinking. I actually like that. Shit, I might have to do that myself on a regular basis because shit get hard sometimes. And then tell daddy one thing that I appreciate about him and continue to lift him up. Stop defending myself. Anything daddy says is to help me thank him and be happy and fix a problem right every day, even if it's simple sentence or just to write a thought down. So man, this is some powerful stuff, man. Like I said, I don't see anything. There's nothing criminal about this, but they're going to try to use this to say that he brainwashed them because that's some of the allegations that I've heard in all this. But again, this is a relationship between two consenting adults. R. Kelly is obviously not Jim Jones, and he didn't have them commit suicide or none of that, right? So this is just a relationship between adults. If you don't want to do these things, you don't have to. You can just say no and you can leave. Plain and simple. Do you hear her object to saying any of this stuff, right? You don't hear her object. You don't hear her complaining about these things, right? So there's no crime here, right? And then it goes on. But again, I think he would have been better off by just putting this in writing, right? That's my opinion. It's just a dominant, submissive relationship. And then it goes, now, you testified earlier that when you met the defendant, you told him that you were 18. Finally, we get into it. And I'm just about to stop reading. Now, you testified earlier that when you met the defendant, you told him that you were 18. You were, in fact, 17. Yes. Did there come a time when you told the defendant that your true age? Yes, there did come a time. How old were you when you told the defendant that your true age? I was still 17. What, if anything, prompted you to tell him? Summer ended and I had to go back to school for my senior year in high school. And then it goes on, in what city were you when you told the defendant I was in Chicago? Do you remember where in Chicago you were when in Chicago you were, I'm sorry. Do you remember where in Chicago you were when you told the defendant your true age? Yes, we were in Lincoln Park. Who was there? The defendant and Juice were present, and of course, the driver. You said you were in Lincoln Park. Yes. Is that downtown Chicago? It is. What happened? I remember that he had his old school car at the time, and we had got Al's Italian beef. Man, look, if you have never had Italian beef, I mean, people in Chicago already know what this is. But to my surprise, I found out that a lot of people who've never been to Chicago has never had Italian beef before. and I thought it was, a famous Italian food, but it's really just a Chicago thing. I don't even think it's a New York thing. And if you've never had Italian beef, you are not. I'm not saying that you need to go to Al's, but you need to have some Italian beef. And look, you're not living your life right. Your life is not complete until you had Italian beef. Just trust me on this. There's been several times I've been out of the country and even outside of Chicago, and they didn't know what Italian beef was. I was like, oh my God, you got to have this. Anyway, and they were having Italian beef, and we sat and ate hot dogs in the park, and I had to let them know that I was 17, and I was very scared. And when I told him, he slapped me in my face with an open palm, and then he walked away. At that time, what if anything did you have with you? I believe I just had my phone. What did you do? I then walked away because he had walked away and he had never hit me before. And what happened? He then came back to Lincoln Park to try and find me for a few hours, and I would see these sprinter circling, and I was trying to avoid him. However, it was getting really late, and I was still in the city that was not my own. Did you eventually meet up with the defendant? I did. Eventually saw him and called me to come with him to get back in the sprinter, so I did. Who, if anyone, was in the sprinter when you got back on? Juice was on the sprinter. And what happened when you got back to the sprinter? He gave me a kiss and he said that he would figure this out. And him and Juice laughed and he had expressed he had made a comment saying that he thought that I was going to tell him something 10 times worse. What did you do then? He said that I hadn't needed. I'm sorry. He said that I hadn't needed to get on a flight immediately back to Florida, that he could speak with his attorneys to figure everything out. Did you in fact return to Florida? I did immediately on the next flight. How long did you stay in Florida? Not long, probably about a week. And what did you do when you were in Florida? He had told me exactly what to do and exactly his attorneys had said, in which was that I would need to be homeschooled and living with him in Chicago. And what, if anything, did you do after he told you that? Both he and I convinced my parents to allow me to be homeschooled and to be in Chicago so that I could learn more musically. And when you say both he and I convinced your parents, what, if any, conversation did the defendant have with your family? He had told them that, and then the defense objection. What was it in your presence? Pardon me. Were you there when he told them whatever it is he told them? At later date, yes, I was. Okay, you can only talk about the conversation that you actually heard him saying. All right. Okay. So the objection to that is sustained. Okay. Were your parents convinced that you could move to Chicago? Mr. Kennedy, objection. Yes, they were. Overruled. Sorry. That's all right. Overruled. What, if anything, did you do to prepare for moving to Chicago? I had packed a few suitcases, and my mom had given the defendant a long list of things that I would need for school, and they took the steps to get me enrolled into homeschooling. So I don't, so I don't like this exchange, right? Because again, first you have to remember the mom was texting R. Kelly back and forth, pretending to be Azriel. So that's a red flag right off the bat. So now you have a situation where she was dishonest and the mother was dishonest, right? Because the mother is committing fraud. She's pretending to be somebody she's not. And she's having a conversation. I wonder if it's going to be revealed what was in that conversation. So now you have this situation where you have two dishonest people and you have this line of questioning where R. Kelly is convincing them to essentially allow Azriel to come move in with R. Kelly, right? Or move in. And that's essentially what it is, right? So one can only imagine what that conversation went like. Now, I'm just going to say that I have seen articles out there on the internet where they're saying that your parents sold you to me, this and the other. And I can only imagine what that's about, but we have the facts here, nothing but the facts. And I am just going to cut it off right here and I guess we'll figure out, um, what was actually said in the conversation between R. Kelly and the mom pretending to be Azriel. I'm wondering if we'll actually get to that. And we'll also hopefully find out what was said between R. Kelly and the parents, that private conversation where Azriel did not participate in, what was said to them in order to get Azriel to move in with R. Kelly, because that's essentially what it was. So without a shadow of a doubt, I am going to allege that the parents knew about the romantic relationship between R. Kelly and Azriel, because how else do you explain, this what's happening where their daughter is being going off with R. Kelly and basically gone for extended periods of time? How else do you explain that? And her moving in, right? They're going to say that she was pursuing a career, but we know that's a bunch of BS, because the relationship started off romantically. The relationship did not start off with R. Kelly meeting Azriel in the studio and signing a contract to represent her, or signing a contract to work with her, or even having a business conversation. There's no business discussed whatsoever, whatsoever. Uh, that we've actually seen. The only thing we know is that relation started off with black panties and a phone number. So we already know that there's no way they're going to be able to prove that they didn't know that their daughter had a romantic relationship with R. Kelly. That's just going to be a bunch of bullshit, and anybody that falls for that is just going to be stupid based on the evidence that we have right here in front of our eyes. So that's it. Let me know what you think about a lot of things that I said in this video, especially about the uh, dominant submissive relationship. Was there an agreement for between Azriel and R. Kelly for R. Kelly to be the dominant person in a relationship and for Azriel to be the submissive person in a relationship? Was there a contract, between the two? Um, and when I say contract, an agreement between the two, of course, it wasn't written, but you can still have a contract based off a verbal agreement. To me, it looks like there was a verbal agreement, but I want to hear what you think about that. And then let me know what you think about the conversation that was had, right? We haven't gone through it yet, but the conversation that was had in order to get Azriel to move in with R. Kelly, that conversation that was between R. Kelly and the parents, excluding Azriel. And of course, we're all going to find out on the next episode. That's it. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.